Welcome to RELOGIA, where all disciplines connect via art, sci, tech, trialogues. Art, science, technology. The new forms of education form our new materials, new society, new culture. Team 3, STEAM education, Art Sci Tech Trialogue 6. On the art chair, Professor Dr. Ingeborg REICHLE, Chair of the Department of Media Theory, University of Applied Arts, Vienna, Austria.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I will talk a little bit about a case study at my art school. I'm based in Vienna, an art school that has a long tradition to combine art and technology, like our digital art department that started in the beginning of the 80s, organized by Peter Weibel. And we are now trying to bring the topic of global challenges and STEAM education together. So, our world has changed dramatically during the past 100 years. In many ways, this change has been for the better. In most countries, the average level of standard of living has improved as life expectancy. Moreover, technical breakthroughs have made our societies global and highly interconnected, both economically and culturally. But there's an obvious downside to this fundamentally positive trend. Some problems have grown larger and new risks that threaten humanity have emerged, such as climate change, environmental collapse, mass migration, social inequality and poverty, pandemics, weapons of mass destruction or mass unemployment in times of digital transformation, and the irresistible rise of the robot. Our societies are therefore currently facing a tremendous social challenge and economic threats. So global challenges touch upon many phases of human existence, be it in a material, economic, environmental, social, cultural, technological, political, medical, aesthetic, or also in a moral sense, and cannot be tackled by one single discipline alone. The rise of global challenges will affect the requirements and standards of 21st century higher education, as we heard before this morning, including art education. Today, an increasing number of universities seek to contribute to solving major social and ecological challenges, demonstrating the value of university research and education. However, the nature of programs that refer to global challenges is most notably cross-disciplinary and requires collaboration across disciplines, or we could also say across sectors, and is therefore not in tune, or mostly not in tune, with the social and administrative contours of our modern disciplines, which exhibit a high degree of specialization. Disciplines have established themselves as effective systems of knowledge production and dissemination of scientific knowledge acquisition over the past 200 years and are therefore the driving forces behind those administrative structures that foster the fragmentation of curricula in our systems of higher education. The specialization in today's higher education, which is mainly organized in disciplines, was strongly promoted, especially in Europe, after the Second World War by the introduction of a system of competitive research funds which determined and sealed the divisions between fields of knowledge. Yet whether highly specialized disciplinary studies will be able to meet the demands of a world in transition is being increasingly put into question today. So currently, a whole range of alternative models is being explored in the field of higher education, ranging from interdisciplinary courses to solid holistic approaches that aim to bring the full diversity of human ways of knowing and capabilities together in an integrative educational approach. Integrative study models consciously seek to bridge the gap between different forms of knowledge and understanding, as well as the different pedagogical approaches of a variety of disciplines, such as the humanities, the arts, the natural sciences, engineering, mathematics, and medicine, as well as new technologies to prepare students better for work, life, and 21st century citizenship. So learning outcomes associated with integrated education, such as critical and holistic thinking, communication, teamwork skills, abilities for lifelong learning, are more and more favored in a world that is confronted with enormous strides in technology, including artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and communications. Integrative education can take many forms and has many different phases, but always requires an intensive analysis of diverse didactic models, which place far-reaching demands on the teaching staff. This development places new expectations on teachers, changing their roles from a provider of specialized knowledge to an innovator or a kind of mentor who is primarily building bridges between different epistemologies and diverse fields of knowledge and aims primarily to foster holistic student development in a global and more disruptive world. If one follows the finding and the assessment of the authors of the study, it's a US study, the integration of the humanities and arts with science, engineering, and medicine higher education branches from the same tree, commissioned by the US National Academy of Sciences, published last year, then both employees and representatives of science, institution, and education are in tune that in addition to technical skills, particularly the following baseline skills can be described as future-orientated, written and verbal communication skills, teamwork, ethical decision-making, critical analysis, and holistic thinking, advanced abilities of cross-disciplinary problem-solving, and the ability to adapt and deal with complexity, including uncertainty. And I think we heard this morning already, some contributions that showed us that these skills are not new, that we have, especially in Europe, for thousands of years, institutions, agora, or the gymnasium, where people learn these skills. These skills are particularly ascribed to graduates who have received a broad-based and cross-disciplinary education, for example, combining subjects from science, technology, engineering, mathematics, medicine. Forms of studying and teaching which bring these areas together are increasingly integrated, integrating themes and topics from the arts, humanities, and design in order to enrich the mainly narrow and instrumental perspectives of STEM subjects with cultural, philosophical, and aesthetic dimensions: STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. For although technical developments are the driving forces behind the STEM subject, it is the integration of strategies of the arts or from the arts and design which will offer possibilities for innovation. So, and now I will talk a little bit about a new study program that we started in 2017. I used to be the founding chair of this department. We call Crossdisciplinary Strategies. And it was an interesting experience putting such a BA program into an art school. So the most significant challenge for higher education today is to provide students with a current state-of-the-art learning environment that will broaden students' horizon in terms of how to approach the problems from a cross-disciplinary or multidisciplinary perspective. Therefore, we have designed at the University of Applied Arts in Vienna the bachelor degree program Cross-Disciplinary Strategies, Applied Studies in Art, Science, Philosophy, and Global Challenges to bring knowledge and teaching together that is crossing disciplinary boundaries. So CDS was launched in 2017 with enthusiastic support by the University of Applied Arts Vienna. So we had no extra funding. This was part of the budget of the university. Recognizing the university's distinct strengths, CDS is providing coordination and strategic leadership on cross-disciplinary teaching and learning on campus. CDS curriculum the CDS curriculum draws on a broad spectrum of knowledge from various disciplines and covers basic principles from the field of art, philosophy and science, engineering and the humanities. There is a clear emphasis on exploring the foundation of challenges, of global challenges that our societies are facing today, like the increasing merge of humans and machine, advancing automatization in a world of labor, and the arrival of artificial intelligence and rise of robotics in almost all degrees of our everyday life, and the deployment that biology is turned into technology through genetic engineering, genome editing, and synthetic biology. Very often when we talk in this context here, when we talk about technology, it's more or less software-based or silicon-based, but we try also to focus on genetic engineering, synthetic biology, showing that biotech turned biology into a kind of technology that the biological fragments can be used today in labs and more also in application, as they would be technology. So, and I will show you a second project that is much smaller than CDS, but is one of my favorites, to offer not only a cross-disciplinary approach to education, but also an experimental and hands-on approach. My department, the Department of Media Theory, offers since summer 2017 an open lab class to art students and also to non-scientists, where they can engage hands-on with biology and immerse themselves into current biotechnological research. Biotechnology is, and this is our idea, without no doubt, one of the most important resources for dealing with global challenges today. So this is a picture of our open lab class. We work together with a couple of institutions. We have also a small lab. And what we try to offer to our students is like a lecture I give on bioart and the history of bioart and art and technology, but also courses on the theory of biomedia, how we describe biotechnology tools and so on, and how artists and designers are working in this field. We also collaborate with other institutions like the Ars Electronica Center. They have a wonderful lab, but there is sufficient biotech in Vienna. So although we have an own lab, for more, I would say, more advanced stuff we want to do, or our students want to do, we can collaborate with experts. Oops. So our lab class is designed to provide students from all disciplines with sound, practical, experimental knowledge about how to bring creative approaches together using experimental methods in art and biotech. The aim is to give art students the opportunity to learn and work on biological concepts, bioart and biodesign, basics in genomics and synthetic biology, as well as to offer insights into the cultural and the social implications of biotech, like genome editing, like CRISPR-Cas, for example. But what is very important is we do not only foster an instrumental approach that our students are able to work with these tools, but also to reflect what will be the consequences. Because what we learned, especially from bioart, when I started to do research on bioart like 20 years ago, is as soon as it's out there in the art world or in the design world, almost everybody can do it. And if science and those technologies, if they leave the laboratory, if they go into art school or into the kitchen of our homes and in our families, then we have to consider, I wouldn't say ethical standards, but we have to have a literacy, we have to educate people to cope with those technologies, because those technologies are very, very powerful tool. CRISPR-Cas is an increasingly powerful tool, and you can do it with DIY at home in your kitchen. And technology is not only, like, I would say, positive. We have to be very critical, and we have to find a way to foster innovation, but also to be aware what kind of effects this will have for our societies. So with including global challenges into higher education, we will be able to address the sources, mechanisms, and social structures that give rise to today's higher education challenges, and ask how we can collaboratively propose reform policies for research and teaching alike in higher education, and discuss the future of universities and art schools alike, that we want to create the conditions for enabling good conversation about possible futures through the ways of teaching and learning. And it is very important for us to include the arts, to include the design, because artists are very good in designing and making visible possible futures, and to foster the debate about that. Thank you very much.
Dear audience, for asking questions, please go to slide.do with hashtag RELOGIA01, and also make sure to like the questions that you'd like asked. Thank you.
On the science chair, MIKKEL BOHM, Director, Astra, National Center for Science Education, Denmark.
Hello, everybody. I had to film this. I've never had an introduction like this before. So thank you very much to the organizers, to Svetlana, for this invitation. And it's really very, very interesting, I think, to be in this kind of conference that is so cross-disciplinary and so many different people. Usually when we go to conferences, we are sort of preaching to the choir and just talking to ourselves. But here is much more diverse. And at least last night during dinner, we had some very, very interesting discussions. But anyway, my name is MIKKEL BOHM. I'm the director of the National Science Center in Denmark, and I was told to talk something about STEAM in education. And I've decided to be a little bit provocative and say, is it learning for a better world, or is it just chocolate-covered broccoli? So a little bit about me. and our organization, we are a government organization affiliated with the Ministry of Children and Education in Denmark. We are around 60 people, and we are located 4 different places in Denmark. We get 1/3 of our money from government and the rest from private foundations and so on. And we have many different functions to promote and support STEM education in Denmark. We're a knowledge center, we're a networking facilitator, we make large programs, and we also run the National Talent Program for the most able students. We work approximately from kindergarten to the end of high school, so around 6 years old to 20 years old is our field of work. This is the kind of young people we work with. So the change we want to make is that we think that all children, no matter what, should acquire strong motivation and competences in STEM so they can contribute to society in a critical and creative way. And this is something that is really very close to my heart, because this is, I think, is a democratic necessity. We are very, very technology-driven world. We experience very, very large changes right now all the time. And we need to have a minimum of understanding of scientific knowledge, but also about the scientific process. Because the scientific process about production of knowledge, what is right, what is wrong, are vaccines, are they good, are vaccines, are they bad? And we need to train the young people to say, how do you know? Where do you have the information from? Is it anecdotes on the Facebook, or is it actually deep studies? So that's part of the training that we do. And then, of course, we need more children and young people to choose STEM in education and work. There's still a skills gap, and our Dutch colleagues talked a lot about that. That's important for us too, especially for a small country like Denmark. We really only have our brains as a commodity. So we have to be very good at that. Now, I was recently in a 7th grade class, and I asked these kids, they're around 12 years old, do you know why you should learn to read? And they said, oh, yes, we know, because we have to write on social media, and we have to read the subtitles on the movie, and so on. They were very, they knew why to read. And also math. Why do you need to learn math? Yes, we don't want to be cheated and in the shop, and we want to be able to handle money and so on. Okay, why should you learn biology? And then it became very, very silent in the classroom. Don't know, because the teacher says so. So, I will volunteer. There's no one simple answer to why, but I will volunteer one proposal to why you should learn biology, why you should learn STEM, why it's relevant. And this is why. This is the UN Sustainable Development Goals were decided by the United Nations after a long 3-year process, big public consultation. 2015, there's 17 goals. They're all about a better world. They address the major problems in our society, in poor countries, in rich countries, what to do and how can we make a better world. And I will come back to that, how we work with that, but we take it extremely seriously in Denmark, these SDGs. It's built very much into the school teaching, and one example is at the Technical University of Denmark, if you write a PhD, you have to address at least one of these goals. That's a formal demand when you write a PhD. I think that's very good. So how do we do that? How do we make the good science teaching? Well, there was it's a little bit old, but there was a big survey with 60 countries, put out questionnaires to 15 years old, and they concluded that what is motivating here are these points you can see here. You should try to experiment yourself, and you should know that we don't know all the answers already. There's nothing more boring than just sitting down and being told what some old men 100 years ago with big white beard found out. Why is it relevant for me? Why has it got to do with me? Somebody yesterday said that the astronomers only know what 15% of the universe consists of. That's not quite right. We only know 5%. The rest we call dark matter or dark energy. That's just another way of saying we have no idea idea of what's going on. So there's a lot we don't know, and I think that's very important when we communicate science, we do science education, to raise questions and investigate. We should see that STEM can change the world, we could see that STEM careers are good, and also you don't have to be a genius. And also we have looked at the methods of teaching, and now we're a little bit back to Vladimir's presentation before. Relevance and motivation is really, really important because that is opening the door to the mind of the pupils. It should be authentic in the subject matter. It should include engineering, technology, computational thinking, and so on. And it should be inquiry-based and problem-based. Okay, should everything be inquiry-based and problem-based? Of course not. You need deep learning, but you also need to have open-ended processes and work with the scientific process. In schools, you can do it with very, very small children. If you do it right, it's very ambitious, it's very demanding on the teachers to do so. You should work with continuous formative feedback as opposed to just have an exam and a test in the end. The feedback from the teacher every day is so important, it's so motivating. It's probably one of the most motivating factors at all is to get feedback running all the time. It's like, you should also tell me afterwards, how did the speech go? Because that's very motivating. And maybe we should rethink our assessment system in schools. It should allow room for argumentation and discussion so pupils can relate to STEM subjects and also collaborate with informal STEM or learning environments outside of the school. So, back to STEAM. Why the A? What is the A? The A is art. We've been told this conference, but I have another suggestion. We could say the art is all other subjects. And by that, I mean that it's really a matter of putting science into perspective, to say that science has to do with the world, and it should be open to the world. If you want to address the problems of the world, you cannot do it in a silo just with STEM. You have to be open to other subjects, other disciplines, like my predecessor said just before. A little bit about the Danish science curriculum in the end of primary school. Well, we have deep learning goals, of course. We have certain goals in biology, in physics, in chemistry, and in geography, and so on. But across that, we work with generic competences. You should learn investigation, how to make an experiment, how to find answers. If you're wondering why the grass is a little bit higher here than over here, why can that be? How do we investigate that? The investigative competences are really, really very important. And another one is modeling. How do we represent our knowledge in writing or in drawing or in physical objects? The third one is perspectivate. I'm not really sure that's a word, but you get the idea. Perspectives of what you're doing. And the last one is a communication, because you need also to be able to master the art or the genre of scientific writing and how to present your results so others can redo them and falsify them. And then we work now also with six compulsory cross-disciplinary projects and 1 cross-disciplinary exams. And this is quite new. We've only done it for 1.5 years in Denmark. And we were very, worried if the teachers could do it, if they liked it, and so on. We got very positive feedback, actually, because they see that they can engage a lot more pupils. And this, again, like with the inquiry-based, you can only do it if you do it right. If you have really high teacher skills, high confidence, then you can do it. If you do it wrong, you will get the numbers that Vladimir showed us before. So it's hard. We have, as a national center, we have had teacher training for 1,700 teachers with this new format, and of course it's a big change, but we have very good results so far. Now I'm just going to run very fast through a few examples how we open science up to other subjects. When we do our National Science Week, we like the whole school to be involved, and therefore we invite teachers from other subjects to participate. And therefore we work with history, with storytelling, with all kinds of, society subjects, economic subjects, and so on, to show that science, the core of scientific theme this year, it was water, can be addressed from many different viewpoints. Another way to open up science is to do mass experiments. We had 57,000 pupils out in nature for 3 weeks, collecting little samples of plastic waste and then identifying them through this model you can see here. Will it sink in water? Will it float in water? And next step, and then you find out one of the 7 different polymer types you can see here. And it's done in a quite rigorous way. You can see we had 374,000 samples with geodata, and we sent everything to the European Environmental Agency, and we hope that maybe it can influence European legislation on plastic waste. And it's also to show the kids the scientific process is about, you know, sampling, and it's a collective enterprise, and the grown-ups will listen if you have some good results. Now, sometimes people say, oh, we have to add some art and creativity to make science attractive, especially to girls. Then we get the girls on board. I hear this quite often. And to me, this is chocolate-covered broccoli. We're trying to sweeten something that we have some stereotypes about. This is hard, this is boring. We put a little bit chocolate on top of it. Another, this is actually a vice chancellor of a university in Denmark who said, the recruitment of students to our engineering college is challenged by the creative educations. And I got angry when I saw that, because come on guys, science is creative, science is fun, science is beautiful. And it's really, really important to say that we don't have to sugarcoat science. If we do this the right way, it has all these properties. Just look at this picture. This picture was taken Christmas Eve in 1968. It's the first by the crew of Apollo 8. It was the first picture of the Earth seen, you all know it. And it was really a game changer, this picture. It's the result of an immense creative, scientific and technical innovative process to put man in orbit around the moon 50 years ago with a computational power much, much less than my telephone here. And then be able to take a picture like that. So, all other subjects, it says something about the big picture. And back to the Sustainable Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals are really, really interesting because they see the world as one system. It's not just, if we do something here, it will influence over here. When you see the goals relating to the global environment, you see we're worried about oceans, we're worried about global warming, we are worried about life on land, but at the same time, we want to feed everybody, we want to eradicate poverty, we want to, and so on and so forth. Can we feed everybody without making damage to their environment and so on. So there are some interdependencies here. And then we have to the left, we have some levers for transformation where science and technology is one of them, economy is another, governance is the third, and individual action is the fourth. So it all works together. You cannot fix the world with technology and STEM alone. You need to have STEAM to understand and act. And by STEAM, I mean a more holistic way of looking at the world. And this is what makes sense, at least for me, when we talk about STEAM. That is the openness towards other subjects. So, in conclusion, STEAM education, very good for changing the world, but we don't want to sugarcoat science. We have to show that science in itself really is very, very interesting and motivating. And at the end, I would like to share with you a quote from one of my absolute favorite writers. It's a British humorist and author, and also a scientific promoter and environmental activist, Douglas Adams. He died, he's known for The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but he was actually a very good science writer as well. And this is it. The things by which our emotions can be moved, the shape of a flower or a Grecian urn, the way a baby grows, the way the wind brushes across your face, the way clouds move, their shapes, the way light dances on the water or daffodils flutter in the breeze, the way in which the person you love moves their head, the way the hair follows that movement, the curve described by the dying fall of the last chord of a piece of music. All these things can be described by the complex flow of numbers. That's not the reduction of it, that's the beauty of it. Thank you very much.
Dear audience members, please go to slide.do with hashtag RELOGIA01 to ask your questions. Thank you.
On the tech chair, Dr. HEIDI HENRICKSON, Materials Platform Manager, Aalto University, Finland.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. You might be asking yourself, what on earth is a materials platform? So while the slides are waiting to come up, I'll tell you that the materials platform at Aalto University is our attempt to create a cross-disciplinary way across all disciplines at the university, all departments, all schools, so that we can gather around a single subject area. In my case, materials. And I'm going to provide you with a case study of some of the actions of the materials platform, and this is something we started last year. It was an exhibition called Materials Matter, and you can see this exhibition downstairs on the first floor. We have a number of exhibitions down there. Please come and visit. Please come for a tour. And it's a single case study here of cross-disciplinarity in practice. Are any of you familiar with Slush? I see a couple of hands. Slush is the world's largest startup gathering. It's happening right now in Helsinki. And Aalto University is there. One of the number one questions that we get at Slush is, what is a university doing at Slush? It's for startups. It's for investors. It's for jumping off with new innovations. Why is a university here? So we decided we wanted to provide Slush attendees with something more than, here, have a pamphlet about the university. And that was our remit. So we decided to highlight our research-based outcomes and our research processes for the Slush community. Aalto University was created almost 10 years ago as a result of 3 different universities. One was a university of business, another of arts and architecture, and a third of technology and science. So by its very creation, it's intended to bring arts, science, technology, and business together. I'm here to talk to you about our case study and how our stand at Slush was trying to communicate exactly where science and art meet technology and business. And I believe that while we were successful at creating an exhibition that allowed us to communicate this idea, it still nonetheless exposed some of our failures as an institution to achieve this goal. I believe that a science and art exhibition, and I think that our outcomes show that a science and art exhibition is cross-disciplinarity exemplified. It's an example of science-driven communication. It's communicating science that's accessible to the general public, as well as to the Slush attendees who have a very particular focus. For the participants creating the art exhibition and science exhibition, it's a good example of a real-world arts and design practice. In our case, we hired a team of designers to work with us to help select the research projects that would be exhibited at the, forgive me. We had a team of designers working with our researchers to put together 10 different exhibitions, one for each research project, to show how real-world arts and design practice can highlight the messages and the storytelling of the work of discovery. And I believe that's something that was brought up earlier as well, that the work of discovery is sometimes quite painful, requires lots of iterations, lots of failures. And by bringing in artists and designers to work with their scientists and our researchers, we were able to show what the storytelling, this work of discovery, could be like. And this also allows multiple actors or multiple participants to engage with the rewarding and tangible results that is science. as well as the outcome itself. So back to Slush. This is what Slush looks like. It's pretty chaotic, isn't it? With 20,000 attendees. It's a lot of people in a single place. Most of them are people who are interested in talking to startups, investors, journalists, and coming from 130 countries. So the communication of what Aalto University does needs to be applied directly to this audience, and perhaps not to the traditional audience that many researchers and scientists communicate to, which is one another. And this expert-to-expert communication style that is so common among science, and perhaps in all disciplines, was a huge challenge for us to overcome, to create something relevant for the startup community. So multidisciplinarity, for us, we wanted to put multidisciplinarity on display. We didn't want to just tell, we wanted to show what does multidisciplinarity look like at Aalto University, relevant to the audience. And in the past, Aalto University has a major role in Slush, partly because our own Student Entrepreneurship Society helped start the event in 2008. So it's been a common venue for student recruitment, a great opportunity for professors and other decision makers at the university to meet with policymakers and other influencers in Finland and globally, and it provides media exposure. As you can see here, it creates clickable moments. You get people take their photos, they post them. They say, hey, this was at the Aalto University stand. Oh, hello. Let's try again. There we go. This was our stand in 2015. Slush is usually really dark and full of lasers and cloudy atmosphere and really dramatic. But the Aalto University stand has always been like this beaming light of white in the middle of it to try and to attract people. But and it says here even educating game changers. But I mean, while they may be telling me that they're educating game changers, there's nothing in this Aalto University stand that shows that we're educating anyone. In a world of show and tell, there's no show here. All we're doing is telling. We've got computers and little stands and people talking to each other, but we're not really showing what Aalto University has the potential to achieve here. So we decided to invest a little bit more time, and this was the stand that we created last year for the Aalto University display. And as you can see here, what we have are our individual research projects and a story, you perhaps can't see that bit, and a story about what's happening on in that research project and what the implications are. In addition to having an artistic-like display of science projects, we had scientists on hand talking directly to startup investors, potential students, politicians, about their research projects. We also had our designers were also there, although I can't see one in this picture. Oh, she's back here, hiding behind. We also had our designers on hand. So we had designers talking about science, designers and artists talking about Aalto University. We had artists and designers talking to the general public, to politicians, to investors, and getting really excited about fundamental research. Fundamental research is a huge challenge to communicate. Much fundamental research are small iterations, very detail-oriented improvements, stepwise. But it's very difficult, in fact, to communicate the importance of those small achievements to a larger audience, whether you're at Slush or to the general public. And that was one of the challenges we wanted to directly address. So we worked very hard on communicating for the general public. I'll tell you a little bit about our timeline. Now, materials platform were actually only me and 2 designers, but we hired an additional design team. In spring last year of 2018, we sent out a call for research projects and started interviewing different research groups who were interested in participating in this, I guess, experiment of exhibition at Slush. And then we moved on, and we engaged the scientists and designers together in collaboration. And when I say collaboration, I don't mean this is my part and you do that. and I do that, and this is your part and you do that, and this is your part and you do that, and then we come together at the end and we're done. I'm talking about collaboration in a sense that we all work on all of the stages of development together. So the designers and the scientists were constantly going back and forth, negotiating meaning, negotiating message, keeping it centered on not only what the scientists wanted to highlight, because scientists love details, but also on the communicative ability of the objects themselves, as well as the message that they wanted people to walk away with. Finally, in the autumn of last year, the Materials Matter exhibition stands and the displays themselves were put together to provide an experience for our slush attendees. Here's an example of some of the work that we've done. So one of our designers, Ariana Reilander, she did her degree, was doing her master's degree at the time that we hired her in furniture design. So she drew from her own master's degree project to decide how to design the furniture, as you see here. And this process was actually pretty fascinating from the perspective of me as the manager of the platform. My background is in women's studies and sociology. So I've been brought in to act as the interface between the designers and the researchers and the university as a whole. I had never seen this sort of backstage work happening before. We gave this master's student, who until now had had primarily conceptual art assignments that came from the classroom, and gave her something that was much bigger than just an assignment, that actually had an immediate effect, an immediate application. So she had a huge learning jump during this process from, instead of just fulfilling an assignment, but rather lots of time management, lots of direct collaboration with the researchers, as well as the challenges of using software on a university computer system, as many of you may know. Communicating expertise was one of the biggest challenges, I think, of this exercise, primarily because our researchers are very obsessed with certain details. I'll show you an example here in a moment. But before we do, I'd like to point out that we've got a couple of different research projects here. This person here is from the Aalto Entrepreneurship Society. He's one of the students that helps make the entrepreneurship ecosystem at Aalto function. And here is a potential angel investor. You can see this display downstairs if you come and visit us. But this is an example of 3D printed structures that are incredibly lightweight, and the structure themselves provides an enormous amount of strength. And the application is aerospace industry. But believe me, that's not the text that we started with when we heard from the researchers themselves. Here's an example. One of their projects, this was the beginning of a 7 to 9 page text that they provided us with to tell us about their research project. So Sayani Majumdar says that, well, I'll let you read it. How's that for science communication? It's very expert to expert. This project is called MEM resistors. I'm not sure I understand exactly what she's talking about there. So our next stage was to break it down to something that was a little bit more understandable. And although it's still quite wordy, it still has a better opportunity to communicate what it is that Sayani is trying to achieve with her research on MEM resistors, which I actually find difficult to pronounce even. But we have a video, and I'm giving a cue up to the person at the booth, that we have a video coming up right now. So we were super challenged by the ability to communicate what she was trying to show what she was telling us. So one of our designers got together with Sayani and started talking to her, and they were going back and forth. Could you kill the audio? I'd rather not have the audio if that's possible. Thank you. We thought we had a purely theoretical experiment happening here. And when one of the designers went to talk to Sayani, it turns out that not only is it far beyond just a theoretical concept, it's actually, she has a lab. She has things. She has materials. So in the 3 months working with Sayani and talking to her about her project, she was so focused on all of the details that go into her major advancement that she's trying to make, that she failed to recognize that she actually had a physical location and physical objects that she was researching, instead of simply a concept that she was developing, that we decided to help her rename brain-like computing. Much easier to say than memory stores. Sayani had just received a large grant from the Academy of Finland for this project. And one of the remits of the Academy funding, and perhaps this is the case in all of your home countries, but certainly for the European Union, you have to show that you've made some public communication, that you were able to disseminate your findings and your research process to the public. And she was struggling to do this, just like she was struggling to communicate with us. Her communicative ability was so specialist to specialist that it was too much of a challenge for her to even say, I have a lab, come see me, and I'll show you what I do. After her exposure at Slush, and we had numerous angel investors come talk to us about this, and people from companies who were super excited about brain-like computing, which in effect combines the hardware and software that our brains use, hardware and software at the same time, to create a more efficient memory chip. After all of this outcome, Sayani now has her own small startup within a larger R&D company, and has moved her, what was previously expressed to be a theoretical research project, into something that is now being actually developed in a lab, in partnership with companies, with real applications. This video was her CV. It's not a very high quality production of a video, but we were able to take what she had given us that was many pages long and reduce it to 3 or 4 sentences, 1 minute, easy to absorb, relatable with the person in it, rather than words on a page. I think that for Sayani, the outcome for her means that she has great potential to continue her research, but in a way that is immediately being applied and being tested. One of the things that we discovered as a result of this process of creating a arts and science exhibition for the startup community is that it's not just the academic disciplines themselves that are isolated, but rather the institutional structures and practices at our university were highly isolated and operate on disciplinary knowledge and perspectives that are pretty stuck. In our case, our challenge wasn't working with researchers and artists together to create a collaborative project. Our outcomes, we believe, were fantastic for the people who came to Slush to talk to us. Unfortunately, our challenges had to do with our own institution's communications department. Our communications department focused on highlighting the achievements of the university as a whole, but really unable to understand the requirements that researchers may have for legitimacy and authenticity that often are communicated through the details or the specificity of their work. Something that the artists took months to cultivate with them was lost in weeks through our communications team. So cross-disciplinary communication that we attempted was time-consuming, relationship-building, and had excellent outcomes for actually reaching the general public. But unfortunately, our communications department at the university as a whole was more interested in appeal. Now, this can be fine if your research is pretty. This can be fine if it's something that you can create a clickable moment, take a photo of, put it on Instagram, put it in your Twitter feed. But if it isn't, or even if it could be, sometimes the communications objectives of the public relations team took precedence over the actual research itself. In addition to that, sometimes it took precedence over the hard work that the designers and artists had put into visualizing these research projects. So we'd done the work. This is that same example of a 3D printed strong object. Lightweight, strong 3D printed structures. And this was their advertising campaign. This appeared on websites, it appeared on street signs, it appeared in the metro and so on, as an advertisement for Aalto University as a whole, the What If campaign. What if we could 3D print materials with customized properties? Well, of course we can. But the question is, what if we could, then what? What could we make? And in this case, the researchers happened to print something that is photogenic. Unfortunately, this is what our communications team decided to do with what if solar cells could be made out of fish scales. Now, this particular research project is actually replacing some components in solar cells with biomaterials. And by that I mean wood, plant-based materials. We didn't mean fish in a plastic package. From the perspective of the researcher, the most appropriate thing to show here would be leaves, or maybe your salad. Or if you really wanted to get down to trash and look inside your compost bin, maybe an attractive compost bin. But instead we got this fish. It was embarrassing. It was inaccurate. It created immediate conflict between the communications team, my team, and our researchers. Not only that, but this is our stand at Slush. It was full, but one of our communications team decided to scream at one of the Slush organizers for a good 10 or 15 minutes about how she insisted on their What If campaign flyers must be passed out in our stand. Slush has a policy where you don't allow paper on your stand, on your information booth, to reduce waste. And she's like, but we paid for this stand, and we're going to give out anything we want. The whole stand emptied. And the whole area around us emptied as soon as the screaming started. Her perspective that she was right, the communication person was right, that it was her right to communicate exactly the way she wanted to, and that it didn't matter what the greater context was her challenge. It wasn't just an individual, it was an entire team. Here's another example. Sorry. What if metals could be protected with wood? Once again, let's go back to the idea that show and tell. There's nothing in here that is metal. There is nothing in here that is made of wood. Nothing at all. But this was the campaign. Again, conflict with the researcher, conflict with the design team, because the design team had actually taken a great deal of effort to create this. What we have here is a wood byproduct, or I guess you could call it a waste from the paper and pulp industry that has been turned into a coating that protects metal. When we initially met with the researchers, they gave us a vial of this brown liquidy stuff that looked really suspicious. And they said, that's our project. And then, of course, a few pages of text to explain what the project was about. But Lisa Poskiparta, one of our designers, she's also a furniture designer herself, has worked with metal and wood. So she created this cityscape out of metal, raw metal, met with a designer. They kept playing around with possible different shapes. They went into his workshop and they painted the coating on together after she had cut out the shapes and bent the metal. Spray painted it all together. She learned about his research process. She gave the researcher an enormous jump in his ability to communicate what he was doing. Remember, his communication was just a vial of brown liquid. And now what he's communicating says exactly what he hopes to do, what his outcome he would prefer it to be, which is protecting metal using wood-based coating for, hopefully, the building and car industry. I just want to contrast that again. What if metals could be protected with wood? Here you go. Materials Matter was pretty successful at Slush. We got an enormous amount of international press. The president of our university spent a lot of time there learning from the researchers themselves as well as the designers on tour, got to know all of our 10 research projects. But unfortunately, and perhaps you don't know this, but a ticket to Slush costs 900 euros. The university wasn't interested in paying for a ticket for the 30 people who were involved in making Materials Matter happen. And given the experience that our researchers had in this communications bungle, in which their specificity and their perspectives and even our designers' efforts to bring these messages together was completely ignored, we decided to organize another exhibition of the same content, but we did it at Aalto University. And so we brought the researchers to the fore. Here you can see Mahdi talking about his bacterial cellulose project here. And we gave them a typical art exhibition opening experience. There was wine, there was cheese, there were salads, there were little pastries. We had a press release. We invited the entire university. We had about 400 people come to our party. The researchers were standing next to their booths. They were the rock stars of the exhibition instead of the people behind the scenes or the people who were potentially ignored, whose message was potentially ignored. They got to be up front at the fore. We continued again. Materials Matter moved again. This time we went to Finlandia Hall. This year is Finland's host of the European Union presidency. So as you may know, the whole city floods with people from the European Union, policymakers, influencers, and media. So we set up a miniature Materials Matter with a focus on science journalism in the area where the journalists were housed in Finlandia Hall. So they could go upstairs and attend the meetings and participate in press conferences. But in the meantime, when they were sitting and having lunch, or they were taking a break, or they were processing their photos, we provided them with Materials Matter, changing our message a little bit to match the audience. Materials Matter is an exhibition such as these, and many of you working in arts potentially are already familiar with communicating science in this way. But for the university as a whole to take on this challenge, for us was a journey in understanding that cross-disciplinary could be exemplified in precisely this type of process. It provides societally driven communication, real-world arts and design practice, engaging the project and rewarding tangible results, and storytelling the work of discovery. I mentioned these 4 subjects before because it's my intention, as in my role at the university, to make this simply the way that we do things at Aalto. That this shouldn't be an exception, this should be the rule. How can we teach all of our researchers, our art students, our communication staff, our administrators, other managers like me, to do exactly something like this as a normal course of communicating what we do at universities? Further, as we may have discussed, and many women do not achieve leadership roles at universities in Finland. Well, there may be some misperception that there are a lot of women who have achieved middle management roles. In the Department of Applied Physics at Aalto University, which has 28 professors, there is 1 woman. In the Department of Computer Science, which has 36 professors, there are 2 women. This is still a persistent problem in our leadership roles. And very often, women in leadership roles in arts don't make it to professorships. In some art studies, they don't reach a doctoral level of education, yet they're the highest level of experts in their fields. In this case, Kati Mietunen, who is one of our researchers as well as was the materials platform manager before I started, was able to gain an enormous amount of leadership experience as a result of starting this project and launching it before passing it on to me. Kati went on through the process of having one of her own research projects communicated at the exhibition, the solar cells out of biomaterials project, She wrote a really, really amazing grant, and now she's got 5 years of funding from the Academy of Finland. From her perspective, that putting together this exhibition was actually the best possible outcome for her to move back into research after the pressures of having a baby and looking for a job in a very strangled field that is unlikely to hire women. She became independently funded instead. Our designers, Valeria, Lisa, and Ariana, were given real-world project that they could put on their CVs rather than a school assignment or university school assignment. And Pirjo Karjainen was our curator. And when Aalto University formed 10 years ago and the School of Arts came in, Pirjo was listed as a lecturer and couldn't achieve professorship status because there are 2 tracks. You can either go be in the professorship track or you can be in the lectureship track. And even in the School of Arts, 50% of the professors are men, 50% are women, even though 90% of the students are women. So the leadership, I guess we call them gender scissors. The further you are in your career, the more you lose women's participation in academia. It is also the case in arts. But for Pirjo, this allowed her to achieve the position of professor of practice at Aalto University directly as a result of the excellent outcomes that we had in materials matter. For Lisa and Ariane, real-world applications have allowed them to find work after the master's degree in design. In addition, materials matter has become a template or I'm able to reach a little bit of my dream, which is to make this a standard way of communicating science at Aalto University. Here's an example of the Quantum Garden, which is an art exhibition based on quantum research. And they're just finishing up their 2-month exhibition at Aalto University, getting a lot of local press and a better understanding for the general public about 6 different research projects based on quantum technologies. Next week, we'll be opening an AI exhibition called Connecting the Dots that includes 20 research projects. So it's becoming institutionalized. We're doing our best, but I'm hoping that maybe this is something that you can take back to your universities. It's worth it. It's worth it to the participants. Because exhibitions, the process of creating an exhibition, as well as the outcomes for all types of participants, exemplify cross-disciplinarity, as you said earlier, if done right. But it's really hard. Cross-disciplinarity is hard. It's not something we know how to do. Implementing it requires institutional change. I'm given the remit to work with 800 materials researchers and 85 professors. But if you try to connect 2 professors in an individual research project, say, hey, why don't you guys get together and work on this challenge at the same time? And in different approaches to the same question. I still have to go through 3 different stages of distributing the money within the university and 4 or 5 different types of reports. And all of this makes it almost not worth it to work cross-disciplinarity in a cross-disciplinary way at a cross-disciplinary university. My argument here, and I'm going to conclude because I see somebody telling me to slow down, to include cross-disciplinary communication, our curriculum, our values, and in our ways of working. We can't just teach our students, our researchers, and our professors to be cross-disciplinary. The entire institution needs major change. And therefore, one thing that we're trying to do in the materials platform is to insert creative practice in professional and educational training. So we provide training. This is one example of teaching technology and science researchers how to visualize their research results, working directly with designers. Here we have a chemist, a computational physicist, and a designer to show how to show more than tell. And in conclusion, materials do matter. Please come and see me. Thank you.
Dear audience, please join us at slide.do with the hashtag RELOGIA01 to ask your questions of the speakers. Thank you.
Team 3, STEAM Education, Art Sci-Tech Trialogue 6.
So we have 3 questions for our speakers. The first one is, are personalized education programs the future, or should learning be a more or less common experience for everyone?
Okay. I think most learning takes place in a social context, and I think that, of course, learning should be personalized. That's, every teacher knows that you work with a diverse classroom. But I think, I'm not really sure I completely understand the question, but in terms of school education, I think it's very, very important to have learning in a social setting and not as an individual learning process only, at least. Of course, there are coming new systems also, computer-based system, adaptive systems that takes your level into account and take you through a process. And I think for some of the deep learning, for instance, mathematics, I think personalized programs in teaching can be very, very useful, because it's really a matter of training, and you are on different levels. And if you have adaptive systems that can help you improve from wherever level you are, I think that can be very useful. So there's not one easy answer to that. In some cases, yes, we have technology that can help doing that, but I think it's very important to keep in mind the social aspect, and also the interaction between the pupil and the teacher. So that's it's almost like a politician. It's yes and no answer.
Yeah, I would say that on the level concerning like university or art university education, the question is, do we still stick to designing curricula, or do we transform the professors and also the teachers into mentors to come up with tailor-made, individualized curricula for the students? Because what we had in former days, like in the 20th century, there were the industry, and they needed standards in engineering. We still do need that, but today we see the challenge that we educate students for a labor market that we cannot foresee in all details today. So why not coming up, instead of regulations and well-designed curricula in all details, with mentoring students, so that for their wishes or their talents, they get the best education within an institution.
The second question is aimed at Dr. Henriksson. What do you think is missing to power cross-disciplinary communications to successfully leverage students' projects?
I believe that the embeddedness, I guess, is the easiest answer to that question. That communications team needs its own experience of cross-disciplinarity in its work environment. Therefore, I would love to see our communications team, even at the university level, embedded in departments. And by that I mean physically located in departments and directly working with researchers to help them exploit the outcomes of their research projects as a way to learn the language, the communicative potential, as well as the excitement that happens in developing research projects. That we basically need them to sit with us, to be able to join us in the team, to not be added on at the end of a project, but rather watch the project develop, watch the story of discovery unfold. I think that's the best way.
Okay, Thank you very much. And last question to all the speakers: how can data be leveraged more effectively to improve education?
Well, I'm not sure what is meant by data, but in terms of we've seen from Vladimir, for instance, we've seen some test results, PISA results from different countries and so on, and we're actually doing a very interesting project in Denmark right now, what we call balanced evaluation. So it is to take the exams and the exams in the end of the school year a little bit down, and then take the formative continuous feedback a little bit up. Because the thing is, we want accountability from our schools. We want to know if our children are learning something, and the school owners in Denmark, the municipalities, they want to know if they invest their money in the right way. If we put more money into schools, will the grades be higher, and so on. But as we all know, tests are not really fair, because you all know the stories about if a test is taken before lunch or after lunch, you have big differences. And tests will favor certain personal skills and disfavor others. So we're actually trying to find ways how the formative evaluation, so the ongoing continuous everyday evaluation, can be summed up into data that can be used for accountability in terms of pupils' performances. And it's really very, very interesting project, because when you do formative evaluation, you are in a secure room with your teacher. You're not in a test. You're having a frank discussion about your project, and maybe you're not so afraid to make a mistake because you're just talking to a teacher. And if that is put into data, maybe it will ruin the whole idea of formative feedback. But there are certain tools, and we're developing tools that can try to bridge that gap. It will be more fair. It will probably measure better the real competences of the pupils, particularly if you talk about project-based group work, cross-disciplinarity, and so on. It's some other skills that you measure in that way. So it's a big subject enough for a whole conference here. I'm not sure if that's what the question was about, but now at least I had the chance to say something.
Someone from the other speakers? Okay. Well, thank you very much, and let's thank our speakers one more time.
You are on planet Earth. Her sister is the planet Moon. Performance 5. Sister Moon. MARTINE-NICOLE ROJINA, Training Advisor for Space for Humanity. Founder of SISTERMOON and MPATHY. München, Germany.
We are made of stardust. From nebulas like the Cat Eye Nebula and many more in the universe. Everything we know originates in the Big Bang, and the components of every molecule you are made of are 13.8 billion years old. We share this very unique place called Earth. It exists since 4.5 billion years. In this not-so-unique spiral galaxy, as it is one of at least 100 billion galaxies. Protected by the atmosphere and magnetic field, life started 4.5 billion years ago. At the exact right distance from our Sun, in the so-called Goldilocks zone. And until now, no matter how much we look, we don't find any other life. There is one other very important element, however, in this story, and most of us don't know how crucial it was to life. It moves our minds, hearts, stories, myths, our oceans, and our spirits. Since the beginning of life on Earth. When our Earth was still molten lava and a very dangerous place hit by meteorites daily, a new freshly born planet called Theia crashed into it, causing Earth to spin faster and creating a ring of debris, which formed our moon. Since then, many more meteorites crashed into it, particularly on the dark side we don't see, which is actually not dark. Sailors oriented themselves at sea and called the dark lava spots mare, oceans. The moon regulates our seasons and ebb and tide. And in 1969, we gained another perspective.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Now, 50 years later, only 12 humans have walked the moon, and all the technology to reach it still remains very elite. But what if I told you that now you can be on the moon too?
The moon is so far away, nearly 250,000 miles in fact, but somehow LJ Rich has found a way to get closer.
If you can't make it to the moon, don't worry, you can always leave a message. It's Out of This World, an interactive work of art called Sister Moon.
Into space.
Right now, people are queuing up behind me
From Croatia.
to talk to the moon.
20 seconds, LOS egress.
Yeah.
It's the perfect time of year for this planetary cosmic art project and proving very popular.
Now I can hear you. Good evening.
Good evening and welcome in Dwingelo.
Via a live internet connection into the cabin, my words are carried on radio waves from the Dwingelo telescope, 2 hours outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
I'm going to speak into the microphone and you two are going to do something with my voice related to the moon, right?
Yeah, we're going to put it on a radio wave and we're going to send it to the moon.
1.25 seconds later, my words reach the moon's surface. My words are bounced back down to Earth and I hear them after the return journey, 2.5 seconds in total.
Hello, moon people. What's the weather like up there? What kind of music do you like?
In 1956, this was among the world's first moving radio astronomy antennas. After decommissioning, it was lovingly restored and now used for science, education and art projects like this one.
Well, I have to say I've done stranger things in my time, but I'm not sure quite what they are.
Next day, I caught up with the artist MARTINE-NICOLE ROJINA to find out how she and the moon got on speaking terms.
I always wanted to become an astronaut, and I'm in love with celestial bodies. I'm in love with the universe. I'm in love with the fact that we are made of stardust, and I've been watching universe documentaries since I was a kid, and yeah. I believe that it has a wonderful transformative effect to leave your system, literally go to another sphere, another celestial body, bounce back, and what happens is that inside your mind you are going to see the world from the outside, the Earth from the outside, and you're going to realize that actually we're on a spaceship ourselves.
A lovely way to democratize celestial communication, and for Earthlings like me, it might be the closest I'll ever get to the moon.
Well, this feature got picked by BBC World News, and now Earthlings worldwide know that they can reach the moon too. The messages are chosen by the participants themselves. Some of them reach me via our website, sistermoon.space. Others are recorded at live moon bounces worldwide. We even added to the innovation history at the legendary Abbey Road studios and bounced 50 innovators. Faces full of awe when they hear their echo for the first time.
You see?
Doing jello?
Yeah,
Jello?
this is a radio astronomy antenna in the north of the Netherlands. And my friends there are sitting in that radio astronomy antenna.
Hi!
Hi.
And they are sitting in the little house, down there in the little house. That's where they sit right now. And in the back, there's a window where you would see the dish, actually.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
So this radio astronomy antenna is now pointing at the moon. And we are now going to modulate your voice or your instrument, depends on what you want to do. And we're going to send you to the surface of the moon. And then the craters and the rocks and the dust and everything is going to echo you back.
Oh my gosh, that's so awesome.
The Dwingelo Radio Telescope is a legendary historical monument. With this very telescope, the first measurements were taken in 1956, which proved that the Milky Way is a spiral galaxy. Sister Moon participants can use this technology in a very intuitive and playful way. This is our first visit. And you can see my face hearing the first moon bounces. So art builds the bridge. This was text translated into code and then bounced off the moon.
And what was the message?
Hello, moon!
Terrific!
In the base of the Dwingelo radio telescope is some of the ash of Grote Reber, the radio astronomy pioneer who bridged two sciences, radio and astronomy, and even invented his own technology to discover our place in the universe. He imagined to bounce radio waves of the moon already in the 30s. And we all at Sister Moon are happy that we can share his vision and make his dream come true for humans worldwide and maybe you.